You feel it, don't you? That quiet unrest, that trembling in your chest that no distraction can drown. You call it stress, exhaustion, anxiety. But beneath the words, something older is stirring. It hums in the silence between your thoughts. It waits at the edge of your comfort, a soft whisper in the bones, saying, "Come closer." But you don't. You tighten your jaw, straighten your spine, scroll a little longer, work a little harder. You tell yourself you're fine. You tell yourself you're strong. You tell yourself this ache will pass. Yet it never does. Because this is not the kind of pain that heals by being ignored. It is not a wound. It's a summons. A calling from the unseen world within you. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And maybe that's what you've been doing. Running from the mirror of your own becoming. You can't outrun what lives inside you. You can only postpone the meeting. And the more you run, the more life conspires to bring you back. Through the person who triggers you. Through the failure that humbles you. Through the silence that scares you. Through the loneliness that refuses to leave. All of it. Every ache, every loss, every sleepless night. Is life whispering the same ancient invitation? Come home to yourself. You think you're afraid of pain, but what you truly fear is power. Because inside the pain you've buried is everything you once were before the world told you who to be. You fear your own depth. You fear what might happen if you stopped performing, if you stopped pretending to be fine, if you let yourself feel it all, the grief, the rage, the tenderness, the truth, because you know, once you look, you can't unsee. Once you awaken, you can't go back to sleep. This is the threshold every soul must cross, the moment when you realize that light, without shadow, is only illusion. And so the call comes again. Sometimes soft, like the sound of your own heartbeat. Sometimes violent, like the collapse of everything you thought you were. You resist. Of course you do. We all do. The mind clings to safety, but the soul, it wants freedom. And freedom always costs something. It costs the false self, the mask, the story that keeps you small. You may lose comfort. You may lose certainty. You may even lose who you thought you were. But what waits beyond the loss is not destruction. It's awakening. It's the moment when you finally see that what you've been calling darkness was never the enemy. It was the part of you that refused to die, the part still holding the map to your forgotten wholeness. So listen carefully. That ache you feel is not punishment. It's a doorway, a threshold between who you've been and who you are meant to become. Every shadow is a teacher. Every fear, a fragment of your own power waiting to be remembered. The darkness is not here to consume you. It's here to complete you. So when it calls your name, don't turn away. Don't drown it in noise. Don't silence it with distractions. Breathe. Listen. Step closer. Because somewhere in that trembling, in that unbearable stillness, is the beginning of your return. And maybe, just maybe, the darkness you've been avoiding is the only place you'll ever truly find yourself. There is a part of you you do not show. You know it's there. You feel it breathing just behind your smile. It watches from the corner of your mind, quiet, patient, ancient. It's the one who flinches when you're judged, the one who burns with envy when others shine, the one who still aches for love you pretend you no longer need. You've buried it under politeness, under success, under the illusion of control. But it waits. It always waits. Carl Jung called it the shadow. He said it is the thing a person has no wish to be. And so, we exile it. We lock it in the basement of the psyche and call ourselves good. But every time you say, "I could never be like that," it laughs quietly in the dark because it knows you already are. The shadow is not evil. It's misunderstood. It's everything you were forced to hide to survive. Every emotion you were told was too much. Every truth that didn't fit inside the story you were given. It's the anger that was punished, the tears that were mocked, the power that was shamed. It's the wild, untamed you, banished for being too real. You wear a mask instead. Jung called it the persona, the version of you built for approval. It smiles when you're breaking. It agrees when your heart says no. It keeps the peace at the cost of your aliveness. But behind that mask, the shadow grows restless. It speaks through your irritation, through the people who bother you most, through the moments you lose control and don't know why. The things you judge in others, they're mirrors, reflections of the parts of you you cannot bear to see. When you call someone selfish, somewhere inside you is the voice that wishes to say, "I want to." When you call someone weak, there's a hidden part whispering, "I'm tired of being strong." When you despise the liar, maybe it's because you remember how it felt to hide what was true just to be loved. The shadow lives inside every "I would never." It hides inside your projections, the way you make others carry the weight of what you disown. And still, it keeps calling your name, because it doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to be seen. It wants to come home. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that is the work. Not to erase your shadow, but to turn toward it, to look it in the eye and say, "I see you." That moment of seeing is a sacred act, because when you stop running, the monster becomes a messenger. You begin to understand. Your jealousy is pointing to your unlived potential. Your rage is showing you where your boundaries were crossed. Your fear is revealing what still matters to you. Even your shame, that unbearable heavy shame, is proof that somewhere deep down you still believe you could be more. Every shadow carries a piece of your power. Every rejection hides a forgotten strength. And when you deny them, you stay half alive, polished, but empty. So what would happen if, instead of fighting your darkness, you listened to it? What if you stopped trying to kill the parts of you that once kept you alive? What if the brokenness you fear is actually the birthplace of your depth? The shadow is not your enemy. It's your inheritance. It is the keeper of your instincts, your creativity, your authenticity. It is the raw pulse of your humanity. Yes, it is messy. Yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it will demand that you face everything you've denied. But it will also give you back what you lost. Your fire, your truth, your wholeness. To walk with your shadow is to walk with all that you are. The saint and the sinner, the healer and the wounded, the victim and the villain, the child and the God. Because you are not one thing. You are the meeting of opposites. And until you embrace both, you will never feel complete. So when the shadow rises, don't run. Breathe. Let it speak. It has waited your entire life to be heard. And when you finally listen, you may realize something profound. The darkness you feared was never darkness at all. It was simply you. Unmet, unspoken, still waiting to be loved. We think the shadow is a myth, some dark poetry buried in old psychology books. But it's not a theory. It's everywhere. It's in us, around us, speaking through the world we've built. It's in the friend you secretly envy but publicly praise. It's in the parent you swore you'd never become. It's in the partner you blame for making you feel small, not realizing they're only mirroring your own forgotten wounds. It's in the voice that says, "They're so arrogant," when what it really means is, "I wish I believed in myself like that." It's in every argument that spirals, every accusation that cuts too deep, every time you swear you're the victim, while your own silence hides a quiet cruelty. The shadow walks with you to work. It scrolls beside you in the glow of your phone. It watches how you curate your life for the world to see. The filtered smile, the staged joy, the caption that says, "Grateful," when your chest feels hollow. We build temples to our light and bury our truth beneath them. We chase approval like it's oxygen. We trade authenticity for applause. And we call it progress. But beneath the surface, the real story hums. The shadow hasn't disappeared. It's simply changed its mask. Now it wears productivity. Now it hides behind busyness, behind self-help slogans and spiritual hashtags, behind the performance of being healed. We don't face our darkness anymore. We brand it. We polish it into something digestible, something that fits inside a quote post. But the soul does not care for performance. It wants honesty. And honesty is rarely pretty. It's the moment you admit you're jealous of your friend's success. It's the night you realize you don't actually want what you've been chasing. It's the raw, unfiltered truth that whispers, "I am lonely. I am lost. I am not who I pretend to be." Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." So maybe the people who provoke you are not obstacles, but mirrors. Maybe every frustration, every resentment is a hidden invitation to turn inward. You judge the one who lies, but how often do you hide your truth to avoid being rejected? You resent the one who demands too much, but how often do you silence your own needs to be loved? You condemn the one who takes up space, but how long have you been starving yourself of your own voice? The world reflects your unfinished conversations. Your relationships are classrooms. Your discomfort is the curriculum. And the moment you stop blaming others and start listening to what the mirror is trying to say, everything changes. You begin to see that the shadow is not an enemy lurking outside, but a companion walking beside you, disguised as every person who triggers your growth. The truth is, we are all projecting. We are all reflecting. We are all teaching each other the lessons we are afraid to learn alone. So when you find yourself judging, blaming, running, pause. Ask, what part of me is speaking through this? Ask, what is this moment trying to show me about myself? Because life is always holding up mirrors, and until you look, really look, you'll keep fighting your own reflection, calling it the world. Jung once wrote, "Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darkness of other people." That is the hidden mercy of the shadow. When you make peace with your own, you stop needing to make war with everyone else's, and suddenly, the world softens. The edges blur. The faces around you stop being enemies or ideals. They become companions on the same journey, each one carrying their own darkness, each one searching, like you, for a little more light. There comes a moment when the mask cracks, when the story you've been telling yourself no longer fits, when pretending costs more than truth. It doesn't happen all at once. It begins as exhaustion. as a quiet knowing that something is dying inside you, something that used to keep you safe. That's when the descent begins. Not the fall into despair, but the fall into depth, into the underworld of your own being. It feels like losing everything. The job, the relationship, the certainty, the light. But what's really collapsing is the illusion of control. You are not being punished. You are being initiated. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." And this breaking, is what he meant. Because consciousness is not born in comfort. It's born in fire, in surrender, in the unbearable confrontation with your own shadow. When you stop running from your fear, it turns around. And you see it for what it really is, a wounded child trembling in the dark, still waiting for you to come back. So you go to it. You kneel down. You listen. You hold it without trying to fix it. And something shifts. For the first time, the voice inside you that said, "I am too much," the one that said, "I am not enough," the one that said, "I don't belong," finally feels your presence. This is where the healing begins. Not in running away from pain, but in walking straight into it and discovering it does not destroy you. You realize your grief is holy, your anger is sacred, your fear is wise. They are not poisons. They are teachers. Grief shows you what you love. Anger shows you where you were violated. Fear shows you what still matters. The moment you stop labeling your emotions as enemies, they transform. Pain becomes power. Wounds become wisdom. The broken becomes beautiful. You see, the descent is never about punishment. It's about reclamation. You are not losing yourself. You are retrieving the parts you abandoned. You are gathering the fragments you scattered when you learned that being whole was dangerous. This is alchemy. Turning lead into gold. Turning pain into purpose. Jung called it individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are, not who you were told to be, not who you pretend to be, but who you are when nothing is left to protect you. And that kind of becoming requires fire. The fire that strips away everything false. The fire that burns until only truth remains. You will want to turn back. And that's how you know you're close. Because every soul who walks this path comes to that edge. The edge where the old self dies, and the new one whispers, "Let go." So you let go. Not because you trust what's coming, but because you can no longer hold what's gone. And in that surrender, in that terrifying, holy surrender, you fall, not into darkness, but into depth. You land in the stillness beneath all the noise, and for the first time you feel it, the pulse of something ancient inside you. A presence that was never wounded, never lost, never broken. It is your essence, your soul, the part of you that watched every rise and fall and whispered, "Keep going." You begin to understand that the pain was never against you. It was guiding you, breaking you open so that something vaster could emerge. Because when you finally stop fighting your darkness, you discover that what you thought was an ending was only a beginning. You realize you were never falling apart. You were falling into yourself. And that is the moment you touch true power. Not the power of domination, but the power of presence. The power that comes from being undefended, unmasked, alive. This is the kind of power that doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It simply is. The kind that looks fear in the eye and says, "I am not afraid to feel." the kind that looks pain in the eye and says, "Thank you for showing me where I was asleep." That is the descent. That is transformation. That is the moment your soul remembers itself, not as something to be fixed, but as something that was whole all along. And then there is a stillness. After the storm of breaking, after the fire, after the long, raw descent into yourself, there comes a quiet so deep you almost mistake it for nothing. But it isn't nothing. It's everything. It's peace, not the kind that hides from chaos, but the kind that stands in its center and says, "I am home." You begin to realize wholeness was never about becoming pure light. It was about learning to hold the dark without flinching, to love yourself not in spite of what you found, but because of it. You stop chasing perfection. You stop trying to fix what was never broken. You begin to live as something real, something human. You find beauty in your contradictions. You laugh at your complexity. You forgive yourself for being unfinished, because now you understand. To be human is to be paradox, to be the saint and the sinner, the child and the elder, the wound and the healer, the shadow and the light. You look back and see that every fall, every heartbreak, every dark night of the soul was not a detour. It was the path itself. You see how pain became your teacher, how grief made you tender, how loss carved space for love to enter. You see that every part of you tried to exile was simply waiting to return home. You realize now, the journey was never about becoming someone else. It was about remembering who you already are, beneath the masks, beneath the noise, beneath the years of trying to be enough. And so you begin to gather yourself, piece by piece, shadow and shine, wound and wisdom. You hold them all like a parent gathering their lost children and whisper, "You are safe now." This is integration, not the erasing of pain, but the embrace of it. Not transcendence, but incarnation. You stop seeking escape and begin to inhabit your life. You start seeing others differently too, not as threats or ideals, but as mirrors, as fellow travelers in the mystery of being alive. You recognize the divine not as something of you, but as something breathing through you, in your laughter, in your mistakes, in the simple miracle of waking up again. Jung wrote, "I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." And now those words feel alive in you, because you know what it means to choose, not from fear, but from presence. You no longer need to run from your shadow, because it has become your ally. You no longer need to seek the light, because it has always been burning inside you. You walk through the world differently now, not lighter, but deeper, not untouched by darkness, but illuminated by it. You understand that to live fully is to live both, to carry the wound and the wonder together, to let sorrow and beauty share the same breath. And maybe that's what it means to be whole, to say yes to it all, to the laughter and the ache, to the confusion and the clarity, to the moments when you are divine and the moments when you forget. Because both are sacred. Both are you. Carl Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And now you know. This was never a descent into hell. It was a return to heaven, the heaven that has always lived within your own heart. So take a breath. Feel the weight of your aliveness, the pulse of your own existence. You are the darkness and the dawn, the wound and the wisdom, the question and the answer. You are the whole story. And when you finally whisper, "I am everything I once ran from," something ancient inside you smiles, because that right there is truth remembering itself. And maybe that's all enlightenment ever was. Not light without shadow, but light that has learned how to love the dark. And now, you know, the pain you were avoiding was never a wall. It was a door, a threshold carved by your own becoming. The shadow you feared was not your enemy. It was your forgotten self waiting to hand you back your power. You walked into the darkness thinking you might die, but instead, you were born. Born into a truth so vast, so simple, it almost feels like silence. You were never broken. You were only divided. And every fracture was just a path leading you home.